A cold room at 6 in the morning. A hand-painted sign at the top of the stairs. 41 years of men coming down those steps in work boots. I never once saw a man walk in and announce he was hurt. What I saw was a man take a little longer setting up, rolling the shoulder before he touched the bar, loading 5 pounds lighter than last Tuesday and not mentioning it. Every one of those men would have told you he felt fine. Most of them were telling the truth. That is the problem I want to put in front of you today, because feeling fine after 60 is not the same measurement it was at 40. Have you noticed yourself warming up longer than you used to and calling it nothing? Put it in the comments. This is the kind of thing Strength After 60 covers. Subscribe so you catch the next one. Here is what changed, and it is not what you think. In 2008, a group of researchers put 10 men aged around 64 and 10 men aged around 25 through the same protocol. 30 maximal lengthening contractions of the elbow flexors. Same work, same speed, both groups. Then they tracked what happened for days afterward. The older men recovered their strength significantly more slowly. That part you would expect. That part everybody already tells you. The older men also reported less soreness. Read that twice. The group that took longer to come back is the group that hurt less. The two signals came apart. A separate study did the same thing with older women. 5 days after the session, their strength had still not returned to where it started. Soreness between the groups showed no significant difference at all. So the deficit got longer and the warning got quieter. I want to be careful here, because soreness was never a reliable instrument for anybody. In 2002, a researcher named Nosaka put 110 men through 12, 24, or 60 maximal eccentric actions of the elbow flexors. The 24 and 60 rep groups showed significantly larger damage markers and slower recovery, exactly as you would guess. Soreness did not differ significantly between 12 reps and 24, or between 12 and 60. 5 times the damaging work, same reported soreness. That was true when those men were young. What the 2008 work adds is that the gauge gets less sensitive with age at the same time the recovery window gets longer. You are reading a broken dial, and the thing it is failing to report is getting bigger. I ran a room for 41 years, and I never had a word for this. I had a shelf of notebooks and a suspicion. Get your training card, whatever it is, whether it is written down or just in your head. Look at what it says for shoulders. Most men over 60 who lift have shoulders written down once a week. Some have it twice. Almost nobody has it 3 times because nobody would plan that on purpose. Now count what your shoulders actually receive. Bench press on Monday loads the front of the shoulder. Overhead press on Wednesday loads it directly. Incline work on Friday loads it again. Your triceps work brings it along for the ride. The card says once. The tissue got 4. I want to be honest about what that paragraph is. It is not a study. Nobody has measured how many weekly sets a typical over 60 split delivers to the front of the shoulder through overlap. I looked. That research does not exist. It is arithmetic. You can run it yourself in about 90 seconds, and you do not need me or a journal to check the answer. Now the part where I part company with most men making this kind of video. I am not telling you to train less. The National Strength and Conditioning Association put out a position statement in 2019 specifically on resistance training for older adults. Their conclusion was that 2 to 3 sessions per week per muscle group provides the optimal stimulus for strength and size in men our age. Not 1, 2 to 3. In 2018, a researcher named Gurgic ran a meta-analysis on training frequency. When he compared only the studies that held total weekly volume equal, frequency had no significant effect on strength gains whatsoever. The number that moved was the weekly total, not how you sliced it across days. So when somebody tells you that after 60 you need to cut a muscle group back to once a week, that man is not reading the position statements. He is reading the magazines. And I have spent 41 years watching what the magazines do to men. The problem is not how many days you go. It is that 3 of the tissues in your body are absorbing far more work than your card says they are. And after 60, the thing that used to warn you about it has gone quiet. 3 of them. I am going to give you a test for each one before I give you the fix. And I want you to actually do the tests while the video is running. Walt Kubiak came down my stairs for 26 years. Open hearth at the mill, second shift, then Tuesday mornings with me. Walt pressed 135 overhead the week he turned 64, and he had done it in front of me 100 times before that. He was not a big presser. He was a consistent one. At 66, he started setting the bar down between sets instead of holding it at his chest. Never said anything. Neither did I, and I should have. The technical name for the piece that was failing is the anterior deltoid. That is the front of your shoulder, the part you can put 2 fingers on right now, just below the collarbone where the arm meets the chest. I am going to call it the front from here on. The front of the shoulder is loaded by every pressing movement you own. Not some, every one. Here is your test. Do it now. Stand up. Reach behind your back as if you were tucking in a shirt, and walk your thumb up your spine as far as it will go on each side. Then raise both arms straight overhead and listen. If one side stops noticeably lower than the other, or if you hear a click coming through on the way up, you have found something. Now the numbers, and these will steady you rather than frighten you. Rotator cuff tears are extremely common in men who have no shoulder complaints at all. Roughly 30% of adults over 60 have a tear. Over 80, that figure reaches 62%. A 1999 study looking specifically at shoulders that were not causing any symptoms found tears in 13% of men in their 50s, 20% in their 60s, 31% in their 70s, and 51% over 80. The authors concluded that cuff tears at these ages should be regarded as normal degenerative attrition rather than injury. Hold on to that, because it changes the accusation. I am not telling you that you have damaged your shoulder. The wear is standard issue. Most of it never hurts, and most of it never will. I am telling you that you are stacking 4 sessions a week of direct pressing load onto tissue that already has normal age wear in it. Your card says you are doing 1, and the sensation that used to tell you to back off has gone unreliable. The fix is not fewer sessions. Count the pressing. If Monday, Wednesday, and Friday all contain a press, that is your 3, and you do not need a dedicated shoulder day on top of it. Put that slot into the back of the shoulder and the side instead, which almost never get overlapped by anything. Stan Baylog was a pipe fitter and the most stubborn man who ever paid me $50 a month. Stan deadlifted every Monday. He also squatted on Wednesday and rowed on Friday. And if you had asked him, he would have told you he trained his lower back once a week, on Monday, and that the other 2 days were legs and back. He was wrong, and so was I for about 15 years. The muscles running either side of your spine are called the erector spinae. 2 ropes of muscle from your pelvis to your ribs. I will call them the ropes. The ropes are under load in the deadlift, obviously. They are also holding your torso rigid in the squat. They are working the entire time you row. They stabilize you through an overhead press. 4 movements, 4 different days on most men's cards. 1 tissue absorbing all of it. Your test. Do this one first thing tomorrow morning rather than now, because the timing is the whole point. When you get out of bed before coffee, notice how long it takes before you can bend forward and touch your own knees without stiffness. If that is more than a couple of minutes, and if it has been that way for months rather than after a hard session, that is your answer. Morning stiffness that clears in 5 minutes is a tired back. Morning stiffness that clears at 10 o'clock is a back that never finished the last session. Now the numbers, and I want you to hear these as reassurance before you hear them as warning. In 2015, a team led by a Mayo Clinic radiologist named Brinjikji reviewed 33 studies covering 3,110 people who had no back pain at all. None. Every one of them symptom-free. Disc degeneration was present in 37% of the 20-year-olds and 96% of the 80-year-olds. Disc bulges reached 84% by 80. Among people over 60 with no pain, 55% had facet degeneration and 35% had annular fissures. Their conclusion was that many of these features are simply part of normal aging and unassociated with pain. If you have had a scan and somebody read you a list, that list describes most men your age who feel perfectly well. The where is not the accusation. What you stack on top of it is. The fix is the same shape as the first one. Count the lifts that tax the ropes rather than the ones labeled back. If you deadlift on Monday, your Wednesday squat and your Friday row are not free. And the honest answer is to make one of the 3 a variation that spares the spine. A trap bar instead of a straight bar. A chest-supported row instead of a bent one. Same 3 days, different distribution. Which of the 2 so far described your week better? The shoulder or the back? Tell me in the comments, because I read them and because the answer tells me what to film next. I have told you before about the electrician in my room who never pulled more than 225 pounds in his life. At 81, that man was splitting and carrying his own firewood. And nobody watching him at 40 would have bet $1 on him. I would not have. What he had was not a back or a set of shoulders, it was hands. Your grip is loaded by every pulling movement you do, every carry, and every set where you hold something heavy for time. It fatigues before the muscle you are aiming at, which means on most days your back never actually got the session you thought you gave it. Here's the test, and this one has a real number behind it, not my opinion. The European Working Group on Sarcopenia set the threshold for low grip strength in men at 27 kilograms. That is about 60 pounds of squeeze in one hand. A German study of more than 200,000 adults, published in 2023, suggested that figure sits too low and proposed 29. The median for men in their reference sample was 36 kilograms. Most of you do not own a gauge, so use the version I gave 100 men in my basement. A full gallon of milk held straight out at arm's length. Count to 10. Then the other hand. If your hand opens before you get there, I am talking to you. That test matters more than the 2 before it. A 1999 study found that grip strength predicts incident disability in older men who are not yet disabled. Not correlates with, predicts. And in a 10-year tracking study of nearly 5,000 adults over 65, more than a third of them fell into the worsening group on grip or walking speed. My wife's hands are worse than mine and have been for years. She opens jars with a rubber pad and a bad word. That is not a fitness problem. That is a life getting smaller by an inch at a time, and it starts in the hands. The fix here runs the opposite way from the first two. Grip is the one tissue on this list that most men over 60 are not overloading. They are underloading it, and then wondering why the rows stopped working. Carry something heavy for distance once a week. 2 suitcases, no straps, no hooks. Walk until you have to set them down. Every other man making this video makes biceps the third one. I went and looked it up before I filmed this, and the reason I am not doing that is the numbers do not hold. Distal biceps tendon rupture runs about 2.5 cases per 100,000 people per year. Mean age of the men it happens to is 46. 3/4 of cases fall between 36 and 55. It is a young man's injury and it is rare. I am not going to hand you a fear that does not belong to your decade in order to round the list out to 3. 2 more things I owe you. Fewer than 16% of American men over 65 do any resistance work at all in a given week. If you are watching this, you are already the exception. And nationally, the far bigger problem is men doing nothing. I am not going to pretend otherwise to make my case louder. And on tendon, the advice you have been given is backwards. 36 adults aged 62 to 70 were put through 12 months of training in one study, split between heavy load, moderate load, and no training. Both training groups grew their tendon the same amount. Only the heavy group maintained the tendon's mechanical properties. Going lighter as you age does not protect the connective tissue. It is the one thing that reliably fails to. Count the tissue, not the card. Once a week on paper is 3 or 4 in the body, and the arithmetic takes 90 seconds. Keep the load heavy where a tendon is involved, because light work grows the tendon without keeping it sound. And stop using soreness as your instrument. After 60, it underreports, and the men in that 2008 study who recovered slowest were the ones who felt the least. I spent 41 years watching men come down my stairs, and the ones who held on into their 80s were never the ones you would have picked at 40. They were not the strongest, and they were not the most careful. They were the ones who kept an honest count of what they were actually doing. Go and lift the gallon. If your hand opens before 10, that is the one to fix first, and I will show you exactly how in the next one. Subscribe and you will catch it.